Welcome to Ripen's interview with Decoding Dyslexia RI. My name is Katie and I'll be your facilitator tonight. Ripen has been helping Rhode Islanders for over 30 years to navigate healthcare, special education, and healthy aging. We operate in a peer model, meaning when you call us, the person you're speaking with has personal experience in caring for a loved one with special needs. You can reach us with questions around these issues at 270-0101 or at specialedinfo@ripen.org, and I'll also be putting that information in our chat. We have a few housekeeping issues for tonight or items. We will be recording the presentation for training purposes, and the recording will be emailed to you and available on our website. We will also be sharing resources throughout the evening in the chat. If you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat and our presenters will answer them throughout the evening. We do request that when you're asking questions, you be sure to leave out any identifying information, such as a student's name or a particular school. And now I'm going to turn it over to Susan Donovan.
Thank you, Katie. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here this evening. We've got our friends from Decoding Dyslexia, Rhode Island, and we have a few questions that we'd like to ask them and share the information. So first, I'd like to introduce our friend Tori Jessup Crowley. And Tori, if you could introduce yourself and tell us what your role is at Decoding Dyslexia RI.
Thank you for having us here today. I am the Executive Director for Decoding Dyslexia of Rhode Island. What I do is I oversee part of our policy and working with our partners and collaborators.
Excellent. Tori, can you share with us some of the goals that DDRI has when it comes to advocacy and education and legislation?
Sure. First, I'll just start off with what our mission was. So our mission is about raising awareness, empowering families, and driving positive change on how schools identify and support students with dyslexia. Over the years, we've grown into a statewide community working together towards one goal, which is literacy for all. Part of the goal process that we've come up with is educate, advocate, and legislate. And what I mean by that is first, we like to educate not just our families, but our teachers and communities about what dyslexia is and what effective reading instruction looks like through our events and workshops and sharing resources. We advocate by amplifying the voices of our families so that our needs are heard and understood. And lastly, through legislation, by supporting and shaping state policy to guide Rhode Island schools to use evidence-based reading instruction, which is aligned to the science of reading, which is part of that 2019 Right to Read Act that we were a part of. We want to make sure that every child has access and the right support at the right time.
Excellent. Um, can you tell us a little bit about how the group has collaborated with schools and educators as well as families to promote inclusive literacy practices?
Absolutely. Collaboration is really the heart of everything that we do. We bring families and educators, policymakers together through the workshops and community conversations and awareness events, similar to what we just did at the State House at the Light Rhode Island Red event. And tomorrow at East Providence City Hall, we're going to light that City Hall red. So that's through, those collaborative and awareness events. We help families understand their child's learning needs by connecting them with evidence-based resources and support, which is through our website. We share tools and information that benefit both families and through the communities. We collaborate with you, Ripen. We're thankful for that, through our Department of Ed here in Rhode Island, through local advisory committees in every school district, and through literacy organizations to promote inclusive, data-driven practices that support all learners, not just those with dyslexia. It's for all learners. And it's really about building these bridges so everyone is working together to that same goal.
Excellent. We know the organization has accomplished quite a lot over the last few years. Could you tell us a little bit about the successes that you folks have had?
Absolutely. I'm really proud about how far we've come here in Rhode Island, and we've been able to help lead the effort through the passing of our state's dyslexia law back in 2016, which ensured that every school had the ability to screen for reading difficulties early and provide the right supports for our students who need it. We also strongly advocated for the Right to Read Act in 2019, and this is now in full effect in this school year of 2025 and 2026, so that all schools are required to be in full compliance with the teacher training provisions. Now our focus is supporting our schools and educators as they bring evidence-based reading instruction into every classroom. Each year, we lead the Dyslexia Awareness Month, which I just said about how we light the landmarks red throughout our state. And I'm so excited to see that these landmarks keep growing and growing every year. And
In
we are,
collaboration with Light Rhode Island Red.
yes, absolutely. They do an amazing job with getting those landmarks lit. We were sharing our stories of and celebrating our students' strengths. We also but most importantly, we want to bring that strong community together and building that through our families, our educators, and our leaders who are informed, connected, and truly committed to making sure every child can learn to read and thrive.
Wonderful. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before I open it up to questions from our audience, our participants?
I'll leave that to you, Shannon. Is there something that I might have missed?
Sure. We're looking to grow our family and educator involvement with our organization. So we'll be sharing more information about, committee work, and we'd really like to see some stronger LAC participation. So now that there's a clear state vision and there's a lot of helpful resources at the state level, what we really need to see is that trickle down to each LEA and each district, as each district has, is in different places with this journey, and, families are in different places getting their child's needs met. So that is our next focus, is trying to then, support, more community growth, and trying to then, do a little bit more work there at the local level.
Look forward to that. Katie, do we have any questions in the chat before we move on?
We do have a question. A parent is wondering if you help navigate the evaluation process at all. They think their child has dyslexia, but they're not really sure what to do next in terms of finding out.
You can reach out to us. We can, what we do in this role is we can give you guidance on the best places and resources to go. Sometimes we'll initiate a chat and have that conversation and listen to the context of the story, and then we can give you some advice as to some helpful next steps.
And we have
Very
a lot
good.
of resources of the process on our webpage as well.
Thank you,
Very good.
ladies. And another mom, I think we're going to get to this, but another family is asking how they can help their child at home. Mom saying her daughter is in tears at night because she's struggling with her homework and she's failing some of her classes.
We're going to get into some of that in the actual demonstration tonight. And then I can give some other tips too, because, it is a very painful journey. And after being in school all day long and, maybe not feeling successful, then coming home, it can be very challenging. And we have Tiffany on tonight too, who she will be sharing what that was like for her as a student with dyslexia. So we will cover that. And then if that person needs to have a follow-up, they can send an email to us and we can have a chat as well.
Hey, thanks, Shannon. That's it for now, Sue.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's a great segue to our next speaker, Shannon Saglio. Shannon, tell us what brings you here today and what's your role at DDRI, and what do you do during the day?
Okay, so I'm Shannon Saglio. I'm president of Decoding Dyslexia, Rhode Island. I live in both worlds. I'm an educator, and I've been in education for over 20 years now. And my current role is an instructional coach. And so, part of my role there is helping with digital accessibility tools and instructional technology, and helping to navigate that. So I'm excited about that work because, we're finding ways of trying to embrace more inclusive classrooms, considering the diverse needs in the classroom. So in my role with the organization too, I tend to be that bridge between the education world and the parent world. I speak both and understand both perspectives. So tonight, what I'm going to focus on is, getting to that situation. Okay, we have our child has dyslexia. And first I want to preface this too with, the supports I'm talking about tonight are what you can do outside of what should be happening to try and remediate the dyslexia and the decoding and fluency issues. And that, that is structured literacy, and that needs to be happening. And we need to make sure that that is in their child's plan, that the resources and the tools I'm showing tonight do not replace that. But it's also important to remember that, dyslexia is it's not something that just goes away. It can improve over time for sure. But, when students are tired or the workload is a lot, it's a language processing, learning disability. So, these tools can help lift that work. And it's exciting for, I think, and hopeful for kids to see that these tools are integrated into college and career now. So it's helpful to start to be more aware of what they have access to and how it can help. And then the student ultimately will decide what works best for them, and sometimes they don't want it, and that's okay, so that's sometimes I'm going to say that to parents, like, don't always force it, but I think we want to talk about the why, how these tools can help, and your children will let you know, like, if, what I find when your children find something is working, they're going to use it. For a while there with digital accessibility, one of the barriers, especially for students that need read aloud features, was the voices were very robotic. So you can imagine, not everyone gets excited about that, even though it's helping lift the work. But now that we're in this very, very quick and transformative era with AI, the voices are becoming more human-like, and they're sounding like someone's reading to them. So they might be more open to it. So with that, I'm going to segue in. So first, I'm going to say I'm not endorsing any tools officially. What I'm just going to focus on are some popular tools that parents might hear about because the districts have Chromebooks, and that's a popular method for instructional technology tool. And so we want to make sure that we're using tools that align with that. But on our website, which I'm going to start with, I just want to make everybody aware. On our website, we have a whole digital accessibility page. And I try to find videos for the companies and link the companies so you can further explore and talk with your district, because each district might have, a set of tools, or you might learn about a tool that might be helpful for your child, and you can bring that back to the district. But on this web page, I found little short clips of the different tools and how they can assist students with dyslexia. And a lot of these can also assist students with dysgraphia as well. So that's on here. And I did put some math tools. There is, for Chrome browser, there's a math tool called Equatio. So that's helpful for kids with like dysgraphia. You can use speech to text, and it will, come up with the math symbols and record the work. So that might be helpful. Obviously, if a kid has dysgraphia and real bad transcription issues, math can become a problem when they're trying to work it on the paper. So this is just a resource for families. So I try to find very short, user-friendly clips. I use the clips from the companies themselves, and then you can go to their home pages to see what might work for your child. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open this. All right. So what I do with my students, it's one thing just to say, okay, great, your kid you get your IEP or a 504 and you get your accommodation. Great. They have digital accessibility tools like Read and Write, for instance. That's the first one I'm going to focus on because this is a very popular tool. It's an extension. So extensions are found by seeing this puzzle piece at the top. And then when you click that puzzle piece, you can pin it. So if it's a frequently used tool, you can pin it that way for your everyday use. It's there and you don't have to remember where to find it. And this is what the bar looks like up here. And I'm going to go over some of these features. So what I do, at school is I'd like to just make sure the kids each at the beginning of the year are familiar with this. Sometimes I push into whole classes because I'm trying to, I'm very fortunate in my district. The whole district has, we have Read Write for all students. So I found ways to make it inclusive for all students. For instance, not everybody needs the read aloud feature for reading comprehension, but when students write their essays, for instance, in a Google Doc, they can use the Read Write extension or the Read Aloud extension to play back their essays to listen for some of those mistakes. So we find different ways to use this to support different needs. And that makes a lot of kids feel more included and not embarrassed to use the tools. That's another thing I think is important. positive messaging and you know, and making sure that, you know, I always say, students, you got to use what you need. You got to worry about your learning, you know, and we use like positive framing, and they see that I have these tools on my own browser, and I show them how to use it. So I try and break down those barriers for a lot of kids that way. So here, what I do is I just try and go through and show them step by step. So one of the things with read and write, for instance, you know, the big thing is the read aloud feature. And when you know, highlight a text, and you press play, there might be a little, hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on I set this up as a checklist. Let me go to the website and show you.
Okay.
All right, so I have my bar. And what I love about this now, and let me turn this one off because this is Speechify. It's going to be another tool that I can show people. It will work like this.
You can hunt for frog spawn in shallow, still water, a garden pond, for example.
So
as
if
the
you know,
eggs are defenseless, they're usually laid among vegetation and just below the surface of the water.
It sounds like a real person reading it.
Yes, the voice changed. So for a long time, these were a little bit more robotic and glitchy, and now it's really starting to sound like a person. So for the family members on here, it's important to go to settings on read write, and on here you can see that has all the different each of these icons are listed. So you can set it up horizontal. If you want it on the sidebar, you can do vertical. If you want a dark theme, you can change the dark theme. But when you go to the speech, you can change the voice. So now when you go to this menu, I'm sorry, if you click change voice, when you see this little AI enhanced voice, that means it's going to be more of those human sounding voices, which is fantastic. Because for a long time, when I was trying to, you know, work with students using this, they weren't using it because, you know, a lot of them felt like the voice was a little too robotic. The other thing I do too is like have students check with the fluency speech, because you don't want it too slow or too fast, right? So what read write does is it highlights, as you saw, it highlights the sentence as a sentence tracker, and in that way, you know, it helps kids stay on point there. But if the speech is too fast or too slow for the student, then that's just going to become problematic. You know, it's not going to, they're going to not see it as a tool that's going to help them. For any multilingual families, what's nice, the translation tool now is pretty, it used to be you only could like translate a single word at a time, and now you can translate a whole page. Or if an educator happens to watch this video, you can see if you have multilingual learners in your class and you need to do a quick translate. It's a little slow now because I have multiple like zoom up and stuff like that. But what we'll do is it will take this whole page and it will translate it quickly. It's just my connection right now because of the Zoom. Ooh, all right.
That's amazing.
Well, that happens. So, all right. So, it's still trying to do the page. There we go. It will switch it up. So now you can see it's in Spanish, right? So just like that, it can become accessible for students. And now I want to go back to English. Sorry, just using, because I have the Zoom going, it's taking up a little extra time here. The other thing that I like about this tool is that it has this great feature here where it's got a screen. Ooh, sorry, I just lost my read write. It's got this screen feature here where you can track each sentence. So some kids have tracking issues. This is good for kids with ADHD, you know, or fluency issues. So this can also help with that. And you can increase and decrease the bar by going to the settings button here. And you can change the height, the opacity, the background color of that. And then to click out of it, you just click the like that little icon again. So that's a really helpful tool as well. They might have, you know, let's see, let's say they have a built-in dictionary. Let me go ahead and do that. The dictionary, I have to say, like, I have mixed feelings on the dictionary. Sometimes I feel like when the kids look it up, you know, it gives a good straight up definition. Sometimes it doesn't. So here's balance, and then it will read it to you as well.
Being in a state of
Shannon,
equilibrium.
Yes.
Could you show us how you did the highlight again?
Oh, sure. So it's this little TV that has a line in it. It's called screen masking.
Very
And when you
good.
hover over these icons, it will tell you also its job. Like for instance, it could take this page and make an audio file for you. And then you get a little like MP3 file. So for kids, like maybe you're going to go home on the bus and you want to hear the chapter. If you're, let's say you're in high school and you want to like get a jump start on your history chapter, if it's a digital version, you can, create a little audio file that way. Another thing that I do like is, let me go back here. So you see how this page is very visually cluttered. There's like a lot of graphics on it. There's a lot. So a lot of kids get very overwhelmed when that happens. So I'm going to open up Read Write again. And when the bar drops, there's this feature over here called Simplify Page. This is one of my favorites. It takes a minute because it's going to extract, it's going to take out the videos. It's going to take out all of the, like sometimes like you're on a site and there's ads and all of that. Look what it does. Nice, clean. And, okay.
Nice.
And so on this, there's even some more customizable. So let's say you have, some kids have glare issues. So they prefer white on black just because they're looking at screens all day and that might give them headaches. Okay. So we're going to switch that. It will change the, I'm sorry, over here you have fonts. You can make the text a little bigger. That just makes it a little easier for some students. You can change the fonts. Just remember, fonts aren't gonna, like, there's the research isn't there that's saying, that fonts improve dyslexia. This is just dyslexic fonts. A lot of times that's just more preferential, but there is something to sometimes letters like fonts that mimic like the actual alphabet, especially for our younger readers, if they're looking at digital tools. Spacing can help though. So if you increase like the spacing between lines, that might be helpful for some students for tracking and not feeling that visual clutter. And one other thing that this does is over here on that simplify. Now this is an elementary type of a reading, so it's pretty simplified now, but not if you're in third grade, right? This could be something that's challenging. You can simplify the text, but just remember, we don't want to put our dyslexic students always in just lower level stuff. We want to use this as a scaffold, and a scaffold's temporary, right? Like thinking about like your whole, the scaffolds of a building. So you can simplify it just to get like the gist, the main idea. And then from there, you can go back to the text at the grade level that your teacher provided. And then using some of the reading tools or the dictionary feature that might make some of it a little bit easier. It also has this feature called Rewordify on here, and Rewordify might take some of that challenging vocabulary and make it a little bit more simple. So it says they grow into twisting and turning tadpoles. And then if you click here, wriggling tadpoles was the original. So it makes it a little bit more accessible. Okay. And then the student's starting to see, oh, wriggling really is twisting and turning. So that's a helpful feature too, and that's called Rewordify. That used to be its own like extension, I believe, and now that they integrated it in here. So these are like the popular features here. There's more, you can do. This is vocabulary list where you can highlight words and it will put it into a Google Doc, into a table. But I'll be honest, a lot of kids are never going to do that. Sometimes it's like I say for the teachers, like, oh, you could kind of create a nice little vocab table if you want to do this. You can also use it as a researcher, like let's say each color represented a different theme. If I'm teaching social studies and I'm doing economic, social, political, I can use a color for each one. And then it will take those highlights and move it to a Google Doc. And you kind of have like a little research. You have your little, you're always told the answer site explain, and then you can have it color coded on a Google Doc. So those are my favorite features with the Read and Write. I think it's like super helpful in that way. Another tool, so I'm going to exit out of Read Write.
Shannon, I just want to,
go ahead.
We do have a question in the chat before you leave there. Sarah is asking if simplify changes the context of the text.
So that's what's interesting. So sometimes, it's not supposed to, it's supposed to just be taking out the complex syntax, and it's supposed to be reducing the vocabulary level. But like everything else, you want to make sure that you're checking that. These tools aren't always perfect. So I think that is a great question. And that's why I always say we never want to just simplify stuff. I think now in this era of AI, which I'll get to in a second, you can simplify anything and say, oh, make this text a first grade level. But, if you're with a 7th grade student who has dyslexia, they don't need a first grade level reading. What they need is that help with the decoding and fluency. What they need is explicit vocabulary instruction. What they need is a little context to the reading. So front load it with a little background knowledge. And that's how we can support our learners. But when kids are reading independently and don't have those supports, something like this can get them unstuck. But we want to try and work with our students to go between the two, because dyslexic kids can have real great vocabulary. They can hold on to that vocabulary. So we don't want to reduce those opportunities. So for families who are on with younger kids, while your children, are still struggling with decoding and fluency, please do lots of read alouds with them, lots of read alouds to build background knowledge and vocabulary, because once they close those gaps with their decoding and fluency, that comprehension is really going to take off. So I hope that helps, Sarah. So it's always important to kind of just take a look at that, because they're not perfect tools, but they can be a scaffold.
Shannon, is there a way to get rid of the distractions without changing the text?
Oh yeah, when the first way I did it, it didn't simplify. It only will simplify if I hit the minus button. So the distraction keeps the regular text as long as you just hit that button that was the simplify. So the only way to change like the context is if you hit this rewordify, or if you hit the minus button, which will like reduce the sentences and make it simpler. Okay. So you don't have to do that. You can just do the simplify just to take away visual clutter. Now, don't forget, text structure is important, text features are important. So, there are pictures on there for a reason, there's charts on there for a reason. But once you do that kind of like initial like review of that, and then the kids getting distracted, this might be a little helpful. All right. So, okay, so that is read aloud. And then I'll go back to like our little frog example over here. Another one, I'm going to close out a read. And then this one is Speechify. And this, for a lot of kids in college, they love Speechify. So this could be kind of a nice transition. It's an app, and it can be an extension on a web page. The app, you can snap pictures and have things read to you, and so when you go ahead and like highlight text, it will kind of like follow it.
If you're lucky enough to spot some of these strange eggs.
But if you hear that voice sounds robotic, but if you pay for the version, and they have like at least like 1 or 2 really good versions, their paid version, you can even have the text sound like Snoop Dogg for a little fun. So they want, and this was Cliff White, this was created, the Cliff Weitzman, I think, is the founder. He's dyslexic himself. So he created this with his own challenges in mind. So there are a lot of like professional sounding voices and some fun ones too. So don't worry about that as more of robotic sounding voice. They've adapted too. They've also added like a little AI. So if anyone's been on to Google and other sites, AI is now just hopping right in there, right? It's almost built into browsers. So this one will also do like a little summarizer. It will give you like an overview, but AI is all about interactivity. It's not just like a Google search. So I can say, can you put this in bullet form? And now it will answer that command, and it will kind of help you with that. So for dyslexics, like getting a lot of information at once can be overwhelming. So sometimes, seeing this first in a simplified version reduces the cognitive load, and then the student can go into the more complex readings to make that easier.
This is a great feature.
Yeah. So this is, you can do this with a lot of things. There's, this is one in Speechify, which is now like integrated. You can do this in ChatGPT by uploading a document and do the same thing, which I can support. Let me show you that one. So this is like, you can see here. So one thing that's very important to know about AI is just a very good prediction tool. So how is it created? A lot of data was inputted, pictures, documents, letters, everything you can imagine was inputted. And then the computer system kind of files it by categories and schema. And then when you put in a prompt, within seconds, it's like scanning all of that and making predictions based on the data that was inputted, and then gives you an output like instantly, like super, super fast. The problem with that is that you don't have control over all the data or what the data is. So there's a lot, you have to be very careful with this, especially with students. Like if students are going to use ChatGPT when they're older. I do not recommend this for younger kids yet, because younger kids are still learning. They don't have enough background knowledge, and you don't know if it's correct or not. And, it's going to get there, but it's not there yet. So you have to be cautious with younger users. And there's also like ChatGPT has like, age requirements. But I just want to show for parents, like, you can, do stuff here too, but same thing. If you're going to do a search about dyslexia and supporting your kid, you want to narrow that search into things like use the International Dyslexia Association's website for guidance. That box is in the query. So then it's searching that resource instead of all the garbage that could be on the internet. But you can see here, it's decoding and fluency. There's talk to speech tools. Microsoft is really good with this too. They built in immersive reader into their programs. So immersive reader basically does this overlay. It scans text, and you can do all those features I just showed with read write. You can change the font, the color, the spacing, and it also connects with their app called Microsoft Lens. Microsoft Lens I put on this website here. It's a phone app that connects to all your Microsoft stuff. So again, when you're thinking about it's right here, this video, when you are, going to go into college and career and get exposed to Microsoft a lot, you can have this on your phone. You can snap a picture of a document and you can say, open an immersive reader, and it will read it to you aloud. It's built into Outlook. It's built into all of their documents. And then Microsoft's AI is their co-pilot, so it can be a little assistance. Now, the exciting part for AI is that you can ask, AI for help. Like, can you explain this another way? Can you give me an example? I'm in 5th grade. Can you make this 5th grade friendly? You can break it down, and it could break down because it is a language processor. It can help explain things. So sometimes with dyslexia, complex syntax and sentences can be a struggle. So, that could be a way of getting unstuck. So just like when that Speechify, like you can chat with it to try and find those areas to get unstuck. For instance, Khan Academy on ChatGPT over here, they have the Tutor Me. Now they use like a Socratic method. So a lot of times it's asking a lot of questions of the students. It's not just going to give them the answer, and there's time and place where that works really well, depending on the learner. And there's times where that can be very confusing. So our kids need explicit instruction first. All the things that I'm talking about here are really just in addition to. These are other resources that can help. And what's really, yeah.
Sorry, one of our participants is asking if you could just slow down just a little bit. She's having a little bit of trouble keeping up, and she wants all your information.
Oh, yeah. No, it's hard. There's so much to show at once. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm anchoring in here just to go back. So let's start with textbooks and any novels that your students are reading at school. Typically, your students should have access to, your school might have a connection with Learning Ally or Bookshare. So it's very important then that they can get the audiobooks. And a lot of the books that are in here also have the text. So it will scan the text as well. So that's super helpful because as they're trying to, work through their decoding issues, they can hear and see the text. So another issue that comes up a lot of times, a teacher might post an assignment on Google Classroom. And so it's a PDF. So now you're like, uh-oh, my read write doesn't work on the PDF. Read write has its own, that's my school there. Let me just do this one. Let me go to Classroom. So in Classroom, you can, teachers can now create an assignment using Kami, and Kami is a PDF reader. So that when you open up that PDF reader, it will, what's it called? It can be read aloud if you scan. So I can do create, making a Kami assignment. And then when the student accesses this PDF, okay, it will be read to them. So there's like a whole new Kami library. So let me just show you this. Let's say, and look here, there's a little foundations key there, but I'm going to do this one. I can post this assignment. And then when the student opens it, they can use speech to text. They can have it read to them. They can even do little video recordings. So it's super accessible for PDFs, because PDFs can be a challenge for a lot of kids.
I just want to make a note. It's Kami, Kami.
Correct. And I have it right here, and you can go to their website and they have nice little tutorials and explainers. All of these websites, if you go, so Read and Write just got taken over by this new company. So if you click on these links, it will take you right there. And it has all of these things. So I know I might be going fast for some people because I'm trying to do a more broad overview. You can go onto these sites. My job here is to kind of give exposure. And to let you know what is out there for your child. This wouldn't be like an in-depth on every tool, because obviously we don't have time for that. So this website is really meant for that purpose, is to try and help anchor this for families and just to show you some of the possibilities. There are also scanner pens out there, and those are great for like worksheets, or maybe your child's really at the level where, they're still just struggling with multisyllabic words. That pen can highlight a sentence or just a word, and it has earbuds. It's called a C pen is one of them. That can work. Some kids get frustrated though, because you have to like press down and like scan the whole sentence by sentence, and then it plays it back. So you can imagine that might not work for every kid. But at some kids, it's very helpful too, because like if you have a paper worksheet, you can just, highlight a word and have it played back to you and get unstuck and feel a little bit more independent. All right. And then with Google Classroom, just my big advice for parents, because sometimes our kids struggle a little bit with executive functioning and organization and, making sure all those assignments are in. There's a to-do tab on Google Classroom. I'll show you here. So when a kid gets their work, it's like really, really important that they know what the assignments were. So if a teacher made an assignment, they can go to the to-do tab and it will show all the work that needs to be turned in. So if you're not familiar with Google Classroom, the teacher posts the classwork and then the student finds it under that category in their screen right there. And then here you'll see the due date, the instructions from the teacher, and then comments visible to the class. The teacher might add a little like tip. And then the student, this is very important. I've seen this so many times where, the student does the assignment and works, but they forget to hit this purple turn it in button. So it's very important to make sure they turn it in. But that's where that to do tab can be super helpful, because when this is what it looks like here on the menu, when you look at the to-do tab, it will let you know, like you didn't turn in these assignments, so you can see which ones were not submitted. So that's super helpful for kids and you want kids to own this, as they're getting older. But for parents, if you're assisting in this work, that can be super helpful as well. And then we have, I have, little tips like use a to-do list. You can, make sure that the assignments are on the classwork. You find all your assignments on the classwork tab. If a teacher's using the stream, a lot of times that's for like messages about the class. And always click view assignment to see the directions, because you don't want to skip those directions. And, if you have a kid who's a little impulsive, they might just open the doc and miss what they're actually supposed to be doing. But I find that as a parent, I know when I found this tab, it was like super helpful. And I would, look at my child's Google Classroom and say, all right, how are we doing and then I try to have, shift that responsibility, not for me, but for them to own it, because I want them to be independent. And now it's like a well-oiled machine. We have those habits down. So just to recap, to support your kids with the text while they're still struggling with decoding issues, or let's be honest, even if the kid got through the decoding issues and has a really tired day and they have a lot of homework, dyslexia is a language processing learning disability. So these tools can help lift some of that cognitive load and let them focus on the content and the skills that the teacher is trying to, help them with the homework and the practice that they may be assigned. So next steps, what I would recommend is, if your child has an IEP, you want to make sure, talk to the case manager and make sure your child is aware of these tools and see if, they've been given any help or assistance with them. Obviously, if you don't get trained on how to use it, that could become a barrier. And you want to make sure maybe at the beginning of the year, if your kid's got textbooks or novels that they have to read, that and they're supposed to be getting Learning Ally, or they're supposed to be getting Bookshare, that that stuff that can be set up. And then you can also make sure that your child is aware of the different features in like a tool like Read Write, and that's a popular one, or Immersive Reader if your school is a Microsoft school. And then a tool like Kami or Orbit Note will be those PDF readers, which does the same thing that I showed you with the screen reader, but that is for a PDF, so that will help for those type of assignments. And then AI, we'll do future work with that, because that is definitely a work in progress and it's changing so fast. And that I don't want to just do like in a quick demo, because it can be very overwhelming and you need to know a little bit more about how it works, but maybe that will be a future topic. All right, so I know that's a lot. I'm sorry if I overwhelmed. It's hard to always cover so many tools in a short clip, but just remember, this was just more of an overview, and it's just to show you and make you aware of what's available. And then you can go back to the website and you can go back to those different sites. Like you could go to, look at Read Write and watch your own YouTube videos, go to their website. You could go to Kami. You could go to Microsoft and look at their Immersive Reader. There's so many tools, and there's many, many more. There's AI tools coming out all the time too. So we're in a very highly evolving world, which will be an equalizer for the future.
That's so true, Shannon. That was amazing, just amazing. And just a reminder, we're recording this, so this will be posted on our website after, probably usually maybe by the end of the week or the beginning of next week. And everyone that registered for this evening's session will receive an email follow-up with a link to the recording, as well as all of the resources that have been included in the chat. That was just amazing. Thank you. Katie, do we have any questions in the chat before we move to our next speaker?
We don't have any other questions in the chat, but we have put in some resources in the chat, DDRI's website, specifically their accessibility page for more information on what Shannon was just talking about, previous recordings that we've done with them in the past, and some Ripen resources as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now I'd like to introduce our third and final speaker, Tiffany Solomon. Tiffany, welcome. We're so thrilled that you could join us tonight. Tell us a little bit, what do you do at DDRI?
So I am the Family and Student Engagement Coordinator.
Excellent. Earlier we alluded to your journey. What brought you to us? What brought you here tonight? Can you share a little bit about your journey?
So school was never easy for me. I knew around first grade that I was not as smart as the other kids. At that time, we would do I would count to see when it was my turn to read. And then I would ask to go to the bathroom, and I would hide in the bathroom for a few minutes, then come back into the classroom. My mom asked me one time, like, oh, do you get to read in the class? And I was like, no, only the smart kids do. So I knew from an early age that I just wasn't as smart. That's what I thought. And then during the school years, my mom had me, got tutors for me, and they would help me, but I was still failing every test that I took. My mom would sit there for hours with me into the index cards, and I would just fail every test. I got into high school, and a teacher, my sophomore year, called me stupid in front of the whole class, because at that time math was reading. So you had to read to get to the answer. And so reading was just difficult. So finally, my mother had me privately tested my junior year in high school, and they found out that I was severely dyslexic, ADHD, and had a processing disorder. They told her that I needed a multi-sensory approach to reading. So my mom went online and she typed in it in the internet, and it came up Helene Shupak. So my mom called her and she's like, I'm at the end of my tutoring. I'm getting ready to retire. She goes, but bring her in. And for those of you who don't know, Helene Shupak is one of the founding fellows of the Orton Gillingham Academy. So the first time I met with her, she's like, "Do you feel stupid? Do you feel not as smart?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Well, of course you do. You're dyslexic." So at that time, it was like there was a how I was feeling like someone else knew. Um, so I went for tutoring for 4 years. And when I went to CCRI, then I went to URI, and then I ended up getting my master's with a 4.0 from Johnson Wales.
That's wonderful. So, based on your experience and the experiences that you've had with students through DDRI, what advice would you have for students that are struggling with their dyslexia?
It's hard because I know it's a long day, and for that parent that messaged her, like, that it's you're holding it together throughout the whole day, and what people don't realize is that we know even sometimes just to read the lunch choices or just to read like what your friends are like writing, it doesn't just stop in the classroom. It goes to every aspect of your day. And by
Sure.
the end of the day, you're just exhausted, but just stay with it. Find your friends that will help you. Don't be embarrassed about saying like, "Hey, I need help reading." Or if you're playing a game with somebody, just ask them, be like, "Hey, can you just read me this?" Because sometimes it can be embarrassing, just like because it's not just in the school, it's about like at lunch, or it's about when I remember like being in high school and everyone's like reading like a note at back then when you used to write notes and I couldn't read it. So just know who your friends are, and that's what also has helped me as an adult. I was been in the classroom 14 years, and now having a preschool, I found my people. You found the people who you're
Yeah.
like, "Can you read this for me?" Or "Can you do this for me?" Because some people might just think you're lazy or that you just don't want to do something, but just be upfront about it. And it's hard. And sometimes it can be embarrassing, but the more you advocate for yourself, and like you are powerful, you are strong, and you can do amazing things. It's just going to take you a little longer. There might be tears, but you got it and you can do it.
Oh, that is great advice, and I can see Katie has put a link to your podcast, which we have listened to, which is amazing. So we'll be sharing this with our participants, and we'll be sharing it as part of our resources for follow up from tonight. When you look back at college years, what was the most useful tool for you that you used during your college years?
For me, like, they didn't have all of this stuff. They had, like, Hers Wild, but it was, like, where it read, like, one word robotically, and it was, like, the
Yeah.
sentence. But for me, it was just advocating for myself. I tell people that when you get out of high school and you get into college, it's like this is like everyone forgets that there is still dyslexics in the world. In that, so you need to advocate for yourself. And in my podcast, I go about some of the struggles that I had in college, where a professor even said to me during my master's, there are no adults dyslexic. And I said, "Well, where do they go?" Because we automatically just don't run off. And all I can think of
Doesn't disappear. Yeah.
if we ride off into the sunset, we magically.
Yeah.
So I think it's just advocating for yourself and knowing what you need. I also found it helpful that at the colleges that I went to, I could go to the disability office and sign a paper that them gave my mother the rights to go and talk to the people at the disability centers. So that way she could find out also what was going on. Because as long as I signed that paper, I gave them permission because I was over 18.
Very good. Very good. Very helpful. Um, Katie, do we have any questions in the chat?
I actually have a question since I
Sure.
listened, and I know you did too, to Tiffany's podcast. Tiffany, you shared a story about when you were in college, going to school for education, and trying to request some accommodations and some support, and you got some pushback. And your mom kind of cheered you on. Could you tell that story? Because I just think it's really powerful for parents to hear how they can cheer their children on, so their kids can learn how to self-advocate too.
So I think this is the story you're talking about. So if it's not, please let me know. But it was an education class and I couldn't keep up with the readings. And I asked the teacher, like, can you tell me what readings are important for the next class? And she said all of them. So I remember going outside and calling my mother and just crying, like losing it. And she's like, you need to go back in there and you need to tell her like how you feel. So I went back in there and I said, you teach us every day to differentiate for our students. I said, but you are not differentiating for me. And if you know my mother is the most wonderful woman ever who doesn't like to argue and doesn't like to cause trouble. We call it the saint of the family. But my mom really got me to advocate for myself and really taught me. She was my strength, and my dad and my mother are amazing, and they never, I, they never, because I was dyslexic, they never like looked at me and was like, oh, it's okay, you can't do it. They always sat with me and pushed me and says, you can do it. They were my biggest cheerleaders. So I can't thank my parents enough for all the support that they've given me. And I'm just so thankful for them.
Well, that's great to hear. Great story. Thank you.
Thank you. Tiffany, another question I would have is I know you mentioned like finding your people, your tribe who can kind of support you and help you. In addition to your people, is there any technology or apps that you use in the workplace or in life that support you as an adult?
I use a lot of chat GPT, but then mostly that's what I use for that. But then I always have to have somebody read it over because, as Shannon said, sometimes the wording is different or it's not exactly like what I'm trying to say. So sometimes like having somebody read it over and be like, I don't think that this is what you were trying to say. Because with dyslexia comes the grammar, comes the other parts of writing that is not just with the reading. So there's like the encoding and decoding. So it's sometimes we have to make sure that it flows and different things like that. So just making sure that whatever you have somebody read it over before you submit something.
Tiffany, I'm going to add to that. A common tool that kids have access to in schools is Grammarly. But I want to throw out a warning. What I find, and because this happens to myself, is when you're typing, like Grammarly can like light up like a Christmas tree, and then that becomes very overwhelming. So what's happening is our kids are already struggling, holding on to the ideas, getting the sentence down in the right way, and trying to hold on to the organization structure they're writing. And when Grammarly is lighting up with 20 different colors all at the same time, it's going to jam kids up. So I try and tell kids to turn it off, get your idea down, then use it as an editing tool. Because then you can like focus just on that aspect of it, because kids it really will it can get in the way of that. And like I said, sometimes too, just trying to have some of those blended classrooms. And I know it stinks that we don't always want our kids on screens all the time, but if you have a child whose transcription skills are really at those lower level right now, really struggling with that because we haven't gotten those interventions going, that speech to text can really help because they have the ideas and the speech to text can get it out. But for kids with transcription and spelling where it's such a struggle, I'm watching like they're going letter by letter by letter, they're losing the whole concept of what they're supposed to be using an organizer for or taking their notes for. So the organizers are supposed to help you remember what you're learning, but when it's an overload for those students. So that speech to text can really help. I will say it can be a little bit challenging because it's like you're in a classroom and like how do you do it? And kids are creative, and they have a lot of the earbuds that have the built-in mics. Some kids just like lean into the Chromebook and they've learned how to make it work. Kids are pretty resilient. I'm always watching students and seeing how they do that. And my school, we're fortunate. We have a setting where like kids can be like, they have set tables up in a room or right outside the room that's safe. And, they can use that speech to text. But for those with the homework, that could definitely be a game changer, setting up a quiet space, routines, lots of encouragement. And just like Tiffany was saying, when you're younger, you feel like I'm not smart as everyone else. And that's not what's happening. And we have to make sure our kids know that this has nothing to do with IQ. This is language processing. Writing was an invention. Our wires have to be connected the right way for that reading to take off. And I think that's an important message for kids to hear, is that, I think they carry so much with them in that realm of like feeling different than their peers, when there's so many people that struggle with this. And the more we can improve core structured literacy in the early grades, the easier this becomes. Dyslexia doesn't go away, but we don't have to wait till 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th grade to find out why has school been such a struggle for me. And then it does get challenging, and it can feel overwhelming with the amount of work that's being assigned. So if that's where your child is, then these tools can help leverage some of that. It does not replace interventions. I will say this over and over, it cannot, but it can leverage some of this. So when kids are having to do homework, it's not feeling as overwhelming.
Thank you so much. And on that note, I want to thank all of our speakers, all of our guests tonight. Thank you so much. And our participants. Katie has put a link to the survey in the chat. Please take a moment to fill that out. We read every survey. Ripen looks for feedback in order to improve and bring a variety of programming to the community. And we need to hear what the community needs. So please take a moment to fill out that survey. As I said, this will be recorded and we should have it up on our website in about a week. Everyone that has registered for this evening will receive a follow-up email from Ripen with a link to the recording, and all of the resources that were put into the chat tonight will be included in that constant contact so that you have them for reference and will appear on the website as well. So, Katie, anything that you want to add before we close?
No, I just want to thank all of you lovely ladies from Decoding Dyslexia RI. This was so informational and helpful. And I also want to thank our participants for joining us.